Good. Everybody good?
Yep.
Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Pro Fan. Tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what it do, everybody? It's your boy, John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with another one. My boy is Vladimir, who should be showing up here soon. And today, we got somebody that's a play-by-play announcer on several platforms, including ESPN, ACC Network, Extra, NBC Sports Boston, Bleacher Report, Live. Also on-air personality for at 98.5 The Sports Hub. He's a host in studio programming at DraftKings, and it's Brandon Glasheen, man. We have to get all that in there for you, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I know it's can be quite a bit for sure, but you got to pay the bills. That's what I like to say. So you guys can relate, right? I mean, that's how it goes,
Of course.
That's it, man. You got. Seems like, you're doing something right. You got multiple streams of whatever coming in here. So hopefully you're getting paid everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, it's an industry where you're like, okay, you got to really love it, as you guys can probably relate. Like, you got to really love it to get into it. And then it's a little bit of both. Like, you got to take it as far as you can go and then hope the money will come.
We'll show up.
That's how I look at it. So
I think you're on the right path, man. You're doing stuff for ESPN and stuff. So pretty soon here, you'll be sitting next to somebody like Nick Wright or something who I don't like so much.
Nick Wright. Whew. I'd be hot takes galore if it was next to him. So, yeah. Nick's great. That's good.
And his tears and stuff like that.
I'm great. Hey, this is a great time of year, right? We're into April. We've got Celtics and Bruins playoff starting up. The Patriots made a move over the weekend, which is good to see. They're trying to give Mac Jones something in terms of to help shore up an offense that is now part of a really loaded AFC. The Masters start this week. We had the national championship in college basketball this week as well. So it is really baseball opening day is Thursday. So just there's a lot. So one of the better times of year. I think the weather, as you can all relate to, the weather starts to get a little better. I mean, this past week we got teased, or the week before we got teased, it was like 60, 70 degrees. And then, of course, like classic New England, it's back to like the 20s at the end of March. It's like, can we move on, please? I want to pack the winter coat and put it away for good. But we're used to it at this point. And like everything's starting to open up a bit now, so it's good. It's a good time of year on the sports calendar for sure.
Completely agree.
A wonderful time of the year. So you're a play-by-play guy for the Maine Celtics, right?
Yes. Not the main Celtics, the Maine Celtics.
The Maine Celtics, yes. And I think I seen a picture of you and Brad Stevens the other day. Well, what's it like talking to Brad?
He was great. So we had in the Maine, I'm joking. I know you guys can, for your listeners, the Maine Celtics they're the G League affiliate. They used to be the Red Claws, but now they are the Maine Celtics because the Celtics want to brand the Celtics up in Portland. But Brad was visiting, as he tends to do throughout the course of the season. He'll stop by. I think that was his third visit to the Expo, the Portland Exposition Building in Portland, to check out the young up and coming talent that the Celtics have at the G League level. But I didn't get a chance to talk to him much off the air. He was there with his son at the game we were doing. It was a 1:00 start Sunday afternoon. Just watching the game, and it was actually the Sunday before the trade deadline, before they got Derek White in Boston, and before they made a couple of those moves that actually resulted in a few of our players with the Maine Celtics to get called up because they traded off Richardson, they got rid of Dennis Schroeder, so that meant some of our G League guys were going to get an opportunity to get NBA contracts. So Sam Hauser, undrafted, kind of he's like your wing, three-point shooter / can get some boards for you too, but more of a sniper type. And then Luke Cornett, who we are familiar with from last year's team, when they traded Daniel Tice to Chicago. Cornette came back in that deal. Cornette had been in Maine for a while. Now Cornette is a full-time, at least his contract is a full-time member of the Celtics. So it made more sense after the fact why Brad was actually at our game, because the trade deadline was Thursday. But to go back to your question about what was it like talking to Brad, I was told not to bring up anything related to the trade deadline. So I'm like, that'd be like the funnest thing to talk about. But they were like, do not bring up possible moves or what the team is going to do. What I will say too, John, the best part about talking to Brad when I did speak to him is the team started winning. They had won 4 in a row when we talked to him, which at the time you're like, all right, 4 in a row is still not much of anything. They ended up winning 9 in a row and then losing to the Pistons of all teams before the All-Star break. But that's when the Celtics started to get hot. So I was very comfortable talking to Brad because it wasn't at a time where you have to be like, so, Brad, can Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum coexist? They've clearly answered that they can, but it was cool. Brad, very nice guy. I think Brad, it's easy to say now because of how well they've played as of late, but Brad, the president of basketball operations, Brad, as opposed to Brad, the head coach, he has done a really nice job for his first time doing the gig. So very nice, great with his time. He gave us like 10 minutes. So he was great. It's great.
Absolutely. It's like everything Brad's done this year has like panned out. I'm like, I don't know, this guy is either really lucky or really good at what he's doing, because it seems like every move that he's, down to Al Horford coming back now, it's like a big piece, bringing back Daniel Tice, Rob Williams goes down, now he's even bigger for bringing him back in here, so seems like, Brad hit the ground running.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the Horford deal at the time when they did it, I really liked it. But then I wouldn't have been surprised at the deadline if Horford was one of the guys leaving, because maybe it was a situation where if they could bring in another really good player, if they were going to do anything major, maybe – I thought before they started winning games, I thought, well, maybe they will move Horford because they just want to go completely young, and they want to see what they have out of Romeo Langford. They want to see what they have out of Aaron Nesmith, right? So who has got some minutes, and they want to see more out of Peyton Pritchard. I know they don't play the same exact position as Horford, but any way you can alleviate some of those minutes and free up the rotation a little bit, I thought there was a possibility maybe they just go completely young for the rest of the season. But as it turns out, Horford has been a pretty big presence as far as his leadership. I think it's pretty evident too, and his sister is hysterical on Twitter. I'm sure you guys are aware of. She's great.
We had her on not so long ago, maybe a couple
nice.
Weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. And of course, Anna's not him. Okay, it's Al's call. But when he signed with Philly, I think he found out pretty quickly, oh man, maybe I made a mistake. I miss Boston. But hey, I don't blame Al when you consider the money Philly was offering, the contract stability. It made a lot of sense. But yeah, Brad has pushed a lot of the right buttons. I think Ime Udoka deserves a lot of credit for how he has got through to these players. I'll say this too, I know I'm aware of this, when I do the G League team. The G League team, I don't know if a lot of folks know this, but it was actually right before the Celtics got hot, the Boston Celtics, before they got hot, the Maine Celtics at the end of January. So this is before Boston got off onto a roll when they won 9 in a row. The Maine Celtics, in a game against the New York Knicks G League affiliate, they played at the end of January. It was one of our best games of the season. They broke the franchise record for made threes in a game. They made 26 threes, I think it was, 26 threes. And they shattered the team's assist record in franchise history. And what was kind of funny and hysterical about it was knowing how Boston had been sliding, the Boston Celtics Twitter account retweeted the Maine Celtics tweet of the highlights. Mm-hmm. And instead of it coming off like a positive, the comments were like, why doesn't the Boston team play like this? Why don't they move the ball? Let's watch this team more instead of the Boston team. So it actually kind of led to an uproar because folks were watching highlights of the Maine team and they were like, this is how it should be played. But I only bring that up because Brad did have conversations. If you remember back when Ime Udoka was first hired, he was at the Summer League in Las Vegas. And Brian Robb, who reports for the Celtics on Mass Live, he's a producer at the Sports Hub. Brian Robb was reporting in Vegas. And one of the things that Ime Udoka said at the time was, and he also said this in his introductory press conference, he kind of poked fun at Brad Stevens. Hey, Brad, he ranked 26th in assists last year. We got to get that number up. So he's just kind of poking fun at him a little bit. But I say all this to get around on this overall point. Brad did a really good job of installing a universal system at all levels. And that's what Ime Udoka had in San Antonio with Greg Popovich. And they've tried to transcend that product down to the G League level. So Remy Cofield is our GM. Jarrell Christian's our head coach. From the very beginning, they were all on the same page organizationally about installing a system where ball movement, getting open shots, work inside, outside, just keep the ball moving. And the Maine Celtics led the league in assist rate this year, or they led the league in assist rate for most of the year, and they were number 1 in three-point shooting. So it's a long way of me saying it just took a little bit longer for Boston to get there, which, when you think about it, makes sense when you've got guys like Tatum, Brown, Smart that have played together for as much as they've had. You think, well, maybe they'll figure it out faster since they know each other. But I think they were just playing in such a way that was not applicable to that system, that it took them a while to accept their roles. And the one that I think I would argue that has really changed his role is Smart. I mean, as a point guard, I didn't see it. When they signed, I'm like, Smart as the point guard? Like, he's going to be too tempted to want to shoot too much. But in game, I know the Miami game recently was not great because he took 14 shots. But his passing has been unbelievable. Like, I think Smart as a passer, I must say, I've come around on him. He's been a pretty serviceable point guard, and it shows. Like, I think Tatum is starting to realize, like, oh, I'm in the MVP discussion. If I don't miss any games because of COVID earlier in the year, I'm in the MVP discussion. It's like, yes, but Jason Tatum, you're in this discussion because your team is winning games. You have a chance to get the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference because you're playing team basketball. It's taken a while. They're young players. They're stars. They have brands they got to worry about. Tatum's and Doritos commercials. They're coming around on it, which is good to see. It's good to see. I didn't see it coming, though, in December and January. And not a lot of people did. It was hard, but they've come around.
Nah, I completely agree. I mean, none of us saw it. I mean, for a while there, we lost your video. Oh, okay.
I'm right here. Sorry. Someone was calling me.
No worries. For a while there, I mean, I lost interest in the team. I mean, not that I wasn't watching, it just wasn't tempting to, like, look forward to. There was nothing to look forward to, you know, and football season had just ended, and I feel as though right at the end of football season, that's when the Celtics started doing well, and those guys started playing well together, moving the ball, like you said, and passing the ball, and it's just been, I don't know. I mean, like you said, it took a while for them to get together and play the kind of basketball that Ime Udoka and Brad Stevens wanted them to play, but just seeing them play now is just beautiful. I mean, beating teams by 42 last night, right?
Right, and like even against better teams, like Vladimir, they beat the Wizards. Okay, that's one thing. But if you remember, they bodied the Sixers just before they got hard.
Denver.
Denver's another one. Like
Utah.
That's
Warriors.
Yeah, Memphis. They kicked the crap out of Memphis. That was a game everyone made a big deal about because it was Ja versus Tatum. Ja was kind of on the upwards climb for MVP, and what we found out.
He was dunking out over everybody.
Right.
Hey, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like Memphis, Memphis's record without Ja is still really good. It's like 19-2. Yep. So, and again, that's not to take away from how good of a player Ja Morant is, but that also relates to why, easy to say it now, but like that's why I think when Brad Stevens is constructing this team and the way they're trying to build it, outside of Steph Curry, your point guard does not have to be one of your top 2-3 players. They've tried that already. They tried it with Irving. Now, I think if Ainge was still here, they were going to try their best to keep Kyrie and I think the goal was to have Kyrie get Davis, and your big three was going to be Irving, Hayward, Davis, and then you fill out the rest of the roster. Okay, fine. But what we've come to find out, like, I think Drew Holiday, okay? Drew Holiday was on the NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks last year.
Yep.
I'd still make the case, though, Giannis is your number one, Middleton's your number two, and your third best player is Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Middleton on his best nights.
Exactly.
Even Phoenix. Say it again?
Middleton against the Celtics, because he's always going off against us for some reason.
Yeah, right. That too. Right. And then, okay, Phoenix, runner-up. I know. Chris Paul. As far as guy in the room, vocal leader, I think Chris Paul's important for that team. But in terms of actually on the court, who needs to deliver? It's Booker, it's Ayton, and then I put Paul next.
Yeah.
For the Celtics, it's pretty obvious. If we wanted to rank them, it's probably Tatum, then Brown, and then Smart. So I think it's having a point guard. There's a balance there. I think it's important to have that presence of someone who knows their role. And I think Chris Paul at his age knows his role. Drew Holiday, when he plays with Giannis, knows his role. And that's why those two teams were in the finals last year. And even Steph Curry, even though he's a point guard, Steph Curry, like, notice when Golden State plays, they have Jordan Poole, who's been a huge player for them this year. When Golden State plays basketball, Steph Curry ain't dribble. Okay, time to heave up a 35-footer. That ball's moving, man. The ball's moving. And Smart, for the most part, in the second half of the year, you can pick, again, you can nitpick. You can nitpick that Miami game last week. That wasn't great. But he had great passes in that game, but some of his shot selection wasn't great. It was like, well, Marcus, what are you doing? When he's got his head on right, moving the ball, good things are going to happen. They've proven that. And as you both mentioned, they've destroyed teams. The one Achilles heel of this Celtics team, the Miami game, is one that stands out when it's your first game. So it was your second game without Robert Williams, because the game they played in Toronto, they rested. Brown didn't play. That's a whole other discussion. Tatum didn't play. So I kind of throw that game to the side. But the game against Miami, it's like your first real game, number one seed in the East. Miami had the argument, argument in the huddle with Butler and Udonis Haslem the week before. Okay, what's it gonna look like? And I give the Celtics credit for getting back in the game. They didn't get blown out by 25. I think last year that's a game they lose by 30, and they just fall on their faces. They got back in the game. They're adjusting without Williams. I hope these final 3-4 games of the season, they kind of find a pattern of how to use Tice, how to still play big without Williams. And I think Grant Williams is a huge part of. We're talking Robert Williams, of course. I'm very curious how Grant Williams steps up in the meantime. But I think they figured out, like, I'm just curious, when these games get close at the end, though, and you don't have the rim protector, can they still close out games? And the Miami game did worry me a little bit, but they still play the Bucks again. They still play the Bulls. That's a potential first round matchup. I want to see what it looks like when these games are closer at the end. How do they respond to some adversity?
For sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of Smart, is he the defensive player of the year?
Yeah, so I'm a DraftKings person as well, so I keep my eyes on gambling odds and things of that nature. And Smart has made quite the leap for Defensive Player of the Year. He is now the favorite over at DraftKings at plus 120. Smart was hovering in, I want to say he was like 30-1 at one point, so plus 3,000. You know, the guys that were really in the contention for the award, so Rudy Gobert is always in it, right? Rudy Gobert from Utah, he's always in the discussion. See, you shake your head, and I'm kind of with you. It's like voter fatigue, man. You know, It's like, oh my, this guy gets voted for every year. So
it's like Yao Ming making the All-Star every year. It's like who's voting?
Yeah, but you keep in mind that, remember, it's media members like us that are voting on this, right? Like it is a popularity contest. Like It's like the MVP is like that. Like in theory, in my opinion, LeBron should have won 7 MVPs, maybe 8 when he was in Cleveland, right? Like, look at those teams he was on. And part of that's his own fault because LeBron's like the GM and he has his way of playing, with the exception of Kyrie Irving. LeBron wanted to play with older players his whole career in Cleveland. See Kevin Love, see veterans they'd add at the deadline. They would just, okay, all these guys out the door, trade these picks, trade that. I want to play with older stars. And And we saw that in Miami. We've seen it with the Lakers. That's an old ass basketball team. Giannis, and I think now, going forward for the next, I wouldn't be surprised for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Giannis should be at the top of the list when it comes to MVP discussion going forward. So when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year, I think Smart is very deserving. I thought Robert Williams had a really legit chance before he got injured, but I think what's helping Smart is Jaren Jackson of Memphis had to miss a few games. I mean, even Giannis is in the discussion for that, and Giannis has had some big plays. Did you guys see the Bucks play the Nets, and Giannis had the block at the end? They called it a goaltend, but then they changed the call. I mean, that's big time stuff, man.
Yeah.
But as you both have brought up, when the Celtics are winning games by like 40 points, a lot of times it's because Smart is locking up the best scorer on the other team. And that's why I think if the Celtics could get, I'm jumping ahead here, but if the Celtics get Philly in the second round, I'd love that in terms of Smart. I think Harden hates playing Smart. If you guys remember when Harden was on the Rockets, Smart just gave him fits in the games they played each other. So, and that's why I think it bodes well if they play Chicago. I think Smart could match up pretty well with anybody. So, I mean, look, do I think he's going to get it? I think so. He's the favorite right now. But would it surprise me if, Bam Adebayo is next behind him in the odds? If Adebayo and the Miami Heat get the 1 seed over the Celtics, that might be the differentiator for a voter. Well, they'll go, Miami finished ahead of Boston, and Adebayo's got this many blocks. And Smart. I think the emergence of Tatum as a defender has helped Smart look better as a defender, because a lot of times we just looked at Smart as the guy who had to make those 50-50 plays. I think Tatum and Brown have been more committed and more connected on the defensive end of the floor, which has made Smart look like an even better defender than he already is.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, he is the MVP this year, Defensive Player of the Year. I mean,
yeah.
The guy guards 1 through 5 on the court, on a nightly basis, and it's crazy to see him go up against big men and still, giving them fits and taking the ball away. And, he always says, if I want the ball, I'm going to take the ball. And sometimes it just looks like that's what he's doing.
He's gonna have to do that too in the playoffs, right? With no Williams at least for the first round.
Yeah.
Like I said, if they get Chicago, it would be Vucevic inside. I mean, that Vucevic doesn't scare me as much as an Embiid or Jokic in the other conference. But no, it helps. I mean, it helps. That's the argument I like when you just mentioned about Smart, John. The argument, the part that you mentioned about Smart being able to defend all 5 positions, that to me makes positionless basketball a thing. Mm-hmm. I think folks make the whole positionless basketball argument about shooters, which is important. Shooting's important. I get, but the only reason why you can get away with it truly is as long as the guy playing the 5 or the 4 is not a defensive liability. So, for example, if the Celtics were to if they go small at the end of the game and they go Smart, White, Tatum, Brown, Tice, I think he can get away with that because Smart can be a help defender and make Daniel Tice better. Mm-hmm. But if they had just a run and gun point guard like Terry Rozier in years past here, I wouldn't feel as confident about it because I'm okay, Smart can give them, he keeps the whole thing connected, which is what we loved here. When it's a very, I'm not trying to say Smart's the same as Kevin Garnett defensively, but Garnett kept everyone connected. That's why Perkins ended up being as great as he was, because Garnett was no, you go here, you go there. He made Paul Pierce look like a better defender. Yeah. As long as you're out there communicating, and that's what Smart does. And he gets a lot of crap for that sometimes because he runs his mouth and he's saying stuff to the refs and he can run a little hot sometimes. Well, there's good and bad with that. He might run hot a bit because he runs his mouth because he's also a communicator on the floor. So I think you're right. They can. I think Smart's defense has been a huge part of why they've had this turnaround.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel for a long time, people were juggling with the Celtics possibly getting the number 1 seed, right? Because we didn't want to face the Nets the first round, right? And I don't know. I thought that was complete bullshit. I'm like, dude, you end up where you end up. Don't play don't tank it. I kind of felt like Miami was doing that a little bit. I'm like, all of a sudden, you guys are just like losing games. What's going on here? But they righted the ship a little bit. But where is it beneficiary for the Celtics to end up on the seeding?
Can I say something about what you just said? Because I tend to agree with you, and here's why. The Nets just lost over the weekend in what was virtually a must-win game against Atlanta.
Yeah.
They lost 122 to 115, which for the Nets, if you've watched any of their games recently, allowing 122 is actually one of their better nights defensively.
They don't play any.
Did you see KD's stat line? He scored 55.
Yeah.
He was 19 of 28 from the field. He only missed 2 threes. He went 8 for 10 from 3. And they still lost the game. So clearly Durant came to play. And Kyrie put up 30-something, but took way too many shots to get there. But point being is they didn't take the night off. That was they were up. I think they were up 2 at the end of the first. And then they got outscored by 17 points in the second half. Atlanta ran a clinic on them. So as of now, Brooklyn would be the 10, and that means they'd have to win 2 games to make the playoffs. Their first-round matchup right now, or their play-in first-round matchup, would be Charlotte, which Charlotte they like the way the Nets play. They want to go up and down, too. LaMelo Ball is a thrill to watch. Terry Rozier I know I kind of dumped on Rozier as a defender, but Terry Rozier's had a great year offensively. That is not a team that is just going to lay down for Brooklyn. And if they have to play Atlanta again, I would say, Atlanta just beat them. And Trae Young comes to play for big games. That all being said, I would not feel great about the Celtics having to play the Nets in a 7-game series. Keep the play-in's 1 game. Charlotte, for one night, could Charlotte beat Brooklyn? Yes. But experience-wise, over a 7-game series, I don't know. I think the Nets would still be a really, really tough matchup. I do. I think they've got too many shooters. All it takes is 1 or 2 games to get connected. I mean, what we're all kind of envisioning here, the elephant in the room here, is we're all thinking, and we'll find out very soon. Can Kevin Durant be LeBron of the Cavs? That's really what this is going to come down to. Can Durant be what LeBron was in Cleveland? I think that's the model KD thinks he's going to mimic. We'll be fine. Just let us get in, and we can go on the road. It won't matter. And I think what we're going to find out right away is we're going to appreciate LeBron a lot more and what he did with those Cleveland teams, because I think there's going to be no easy draw for the Nets. But I think it's going to be tough. I still think it's going to be really tough, especially because if it's the first round and the Celtics don't have Robert Williams, I think the Nets can turn it into a track meet a little bit. So I wouldn't feel great. But what would be the best case scenario for the Celtics as of right now? They're the 2, meaning they would probably get the winner of the Cleveland Atlanta. So I say all that. I would like the Celtics against Atlanta. See, I think the Celtics defensively would give Atlanta issues. I would, because I think they could lock in on Trae Young for sure. Mm-hmm. I don't feel great, and this is not to. I'm not dumping on. I'm not making fun of Tatum and Brown. I just think Durant's that good, and Durant. There's just a thing. Durant gets off on playing Boston, and there's plenty of documentation of how, and Kyrie too. They get up. Durant gets up for the Celtics games. I just think it would be a tough series. I just do. But if they get Atlanta, I'd like it. Cleveland would of course be fine. We'll see about Toronto because of the vaccination status of Brown. How that all works out. I listen, they should beat Toronto. Don't get me wrong, but don't sleep on that Toronto team, because Siakam and Van Vliet were 2 key pieces to that championship team with Kawhi. Nick Nurse, I think, can coach. See, Nick Nurse's problem, if you go look at the Raptors, those dudes play so many minutes. Their starters play 40-plus minutes every night. They never have a night off, because the Raptors started so poorly, they had to make up for missed time. So credit to them. They're back in the mix. They're the number 6 team in the conference. but the Celtics should still beat them, even with Brown out. Next team is Chicago. I think Chicago would be, if the Celtics were somehow the 4, Chicago was the 5. I don't know what it is. I had a buddy say this to me the other day. If you remember back in 2009 when the Celtics had no Garnett and the Bulls had Derrick Rose, and that was an epic first-round series, there's something about that Bulls team with DeRozan. DeRozan's had a really good year. I mean, DeRozan was kind of in the MVP discussion for sure. That's kind of teetered off a little bit, but DeRozan's had a phenomenal season. And I don't know, Levine can get hot from 3. He's a pretty damn good shooter. Lonzo Ball was out due to injury, so if they got all their pieces, I think the Bulls would still give. I mean, I say all this. This is my overall point. The East is pretty good. It's a pretty good. I think that was part of why the Celtics struggled too, installing a new system. And the East was it wasn't like just Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and then everybody else. The Bulls got better. Miami was in the finals 2 years ago. I think Miami got better. Their supporting cast is really damn good. Toronto got healthy. Cleveland was okay. I didn't really believe in Cleveland. Then they kind of came back down to earth. Their big guy, Mobley, rookie of the year, likely in the conference. He got hurt. Jared Allen's a nice pickup. I think he's been banged up. And then Philly got Harden. So the conference is good. Let's just say that. But I think the Celtics, I prefer no Brooklyn. So but I'm with you. I don't want them to lose on purpose to avoid their seed. If they end up getting Brooklyn as a 2 seed and Brooklyn's a 7, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight. And I like how the Celtics have home court advantage. That would be helpful.
I mean, I think I agree with you guys. I don't want us to lose game on purpose. But I don't know. I'm not afraid of Brooklyn. I think it's just going to be such an exciting series if we do face Brooklyn. And facing Durant, facing Kyrie, I mean, those guys can definitely get hot. But just like you said, right, the other night, Kyrie had to take way too many shots to get his 32 points. So he goes cold sometime as well. So I don't know. I mean, I think I would feel a lot better if Williams was here, but
yep.
I don't know. I think we can take it, and I think I just have the team have been so confident lately, and I just have so much confidence in them. So hopefully we can take them.
What I will say is the last time they played Brooklyn at the Garden, it was a Sunday afternoon game, which is crazy when you look back. When they played the Nets, if you remember, the Celtics played the Nets. I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, and the Celtics got the doors blown off, right? So very much so a complete 180. But what encourages me is the Celtics came to play. But that game head to head with Brooklyn, that was a close game all the way through. So I'm just saying, I think we're going to get 6 or 7 of those if they play each other. I do. I just do. They're too talented. Yeah. It's no knock on the Celtics. They're just too damn good. And they would take you seriously. They would.
Oh yeah.
They would. And look, if they again, I already mapped it out. It's not a guarantee they get in. I think they thought they could go to Atlanta and outscore them. And Trae Young said, not today. I think Durant respects Tatum a lot. I think Kyrie, I know Kyrie's Kyrie, but he respects Smart. They dial it in more when they respect you. And I think they respect them and their talent.
I agree with that, but I would say the same thing for Tatum. I think Tatum respects KD, and when KD's in town, I think he pulls up to the game he's one of them. You know what I mean?
True. That's fair. That's true. Yeah. That's my point, though. That's why I think it would be a battle if they had to get Brooklyn. I really do.
It would be a very exciting series. I don't know. I'm not afraid of it, I would say.
But play it out. Say you found out tomorrow, oh, wow, we get the Nets in the first round. You think the Celtics are going to win in 5 games? No, I'm not confident in saying that. Right?
Listen, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy series. I just think it's going to be an exciting series, and we can pull it out.
I mean,
I agree.
We play defense as well.
Yeah, I just think we can pull it out.
I agree.
And those guys, I think we can score with them, and we play defense. So I think if anything, it's in our favor, because if it's a track meet, we can clamp down on defense and slow down KD, obviously not stop him, and hopefully that takes care of it.
Right, that's true. As long as the Celtics stick to their principles on the defensive end, and I think this all comes back to Smart, they should be fine. Like they should be able to make it a game that favors. And I'm not going to ignore it. Right, Celtics #1 defensive rating since January 1st. I know all the numbers. It's there. I just think that team is just different. That's all. I just think they're different.
I respect KD as well. I think KD is just one of those players. You don't even know how he does the things that he does, being 7 foot and just knocking. He's a straight shooter, right? So like, whenever he pulls, he can pull up from anywhere and score. So
as long as they stick to it, and I think in every indication to this point, like, look, they lost the Miami game, they've bounced back, they beat Indiana at home, they went and took care of business against the Washington Wizards, like they did what they were supposed to do. As I guess I know I said this already, but if it is indeed Brooklyn in the first round, as long as Smart stays in his role and is not like Miami admitted, like the Miami broadcast, it was like they want Smart to shoot. Like they were tempting Smart to take like uncontested, like walk up threes in transition the other way, because that's what happens. If your offense can almost turn into defense if you're the Celtics. As long as you're staying disciplined, playing disciplined possessions on offense, and if you remain disciplined on offense, it's going to make it that much easier to be disciplined defensively. If you get out of your rhythm offensively, to your point, Vladimir, you're going to allow the game to turn into a track meet and then push it up and down. And of course, playing with the lead helps, right? If you're down 10 as opposed to being up 10, if you're up 10, you dictate the game. If you're down 10 to that team, like a Brooklyn,
it's tough.
You'd almost have to play their way.
Yeah. So we had a couple of things. So we had 11 Reed on last week, and one of the questions that he asked us was, what do you think is going to be the Achilles heel for this team during the playoff now that they don't have now that they don't have Williams? And his answer was coaching. And he feels as though if we meet somebody like Eric Spoelstra, he can coach his way around Ime Udoka being a first-round head coach. Not that he doesn't think Ime Udoka is not a good coach, but being a first-year head coach, he thinks Eric Spoelstra can coach his way around Ime Udoka. And what he was saying, and that just made me think, like, is there a way that Eric Spoelstra could, I mean, if we, like, let's say we face Miami eventually at some point, is there a way that Eric Spoelstra can bait Smart to shoot like he did in that Miami game and cause us to lose the game? And would other team be able to pick up on that and cause that same effect?
Yeah, I mean, if they were to meet again, that's definitely a thing. I think, like, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, my whole point about Brooklyn that I was saying, because it's a 7-game series here. Like, it's not like I know what the Celtics are doing on opponent basis. And again, they can only play their schedule. So I'm not going to I can't get them in trouble for something that they haven't done yet. But when you play a team in a series, and when you're like Eric Spoelstra, who's coached a ton of playoff games, you know how to make in-series adjustments. But I would argue, and this is to back up Ime Udoka. Well, Ime Udoka's been on Greg Popovich's staff. He was on Brent Brown's staff in Philadelphia. He's been on the Nets staff. Like, he's been around. And like with the Nets, you could say, well, what playoff experience does Steve Nash have, right? And Steve Nash's team was a Kevin Durant inch of a shoe on the line last summer from making the conference finals. I mean, the guy who won the finals last year, Mike Budenholzer, everyone wanted that guy out of town in Milwaukee last year. You ever remember that? Like,
yeah, I remember.
If Kevin Durant's foot is behind that line, there's a possibility Mike Budenholzer's not the coach of the Bucks.
Strong possibility.
I would say there's a strong possibility that he's not.
Right? That was the discussion at the time. So outside of Spoelstra, and listen, I've said this before, I love Doc Rivers. I love listening to Doc. I thought Doc was great with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, Mbutu, the whole thing. I think Doc's got real clout when it comes to like how he got through to that team. But there's a but. Didn't work out with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul in LA. Didn't work out. Bingo. It hasn't worked out very much with Paul. It didn't have. I shouldn't very much. It didn't work with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard with Doc as the coach. What it proved, and this isn't all Doc's fault, what it proved was Doc had to have it perfectly laid out for him. Like when they won the title in 2008, Pierce Garnett and Allen didn't miss games.
Yep.
You know, like the whole load management thing was never a thing. That's kind of it. Now, I will say, I've been surprised how healthy Joel Embiid has been this year. Hasn't had to miss a ton of games. That's why Embiid was a front runner to win MVP, and now Jokic is the favorite, but Embiid is still very much, he's got a strong case to win the award. So I will give Embiid credit for that. But my point is, I don't necessarily trust Doc to make adjustments in the series. Doc has too much of a track record of blowing series with leads.
At least he's won at least 3 of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, when it was 3-1, I think they were up 3-1 when they played against Durant in Oklahoma City when he was at the Clippers. There was a meltdown with that Clipper.
Twice against Denver already with the recent playoffs.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, I'll say, like, I think Spoelstra's good. Don't get me wrong. I just think, and like, that's why I said, like, that's why I mentioned Toronto. Like, if the Celtics were to get Toronto in the first round, I mean, let's keep in mind here, like, OG Anunoby made that shot against the Celtics in the bubble a couple years ago. Like, Nick Nurse can coach, and I know a lot of folks that are from Canada. They're very high on Nick Nurse, and they should be. But my only concern about Nick Nurse is he plays his older players like 40 minutes a night. So I don't know if they're going to make it. But I think coaching, I think Levin does a good job, but I just don't. I'm not really high. I think the coaching thing is a little overblown. Like Mike Budenholzer's, this is how it goes. It's like umpires in baseball. If you're not being talked about as a coach, it's usually a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are being talked about, I'm talking NBA. I'm talking about the NBA. Like college basketball is different. Like Coach K, Roy Williams, Bill Self. You know, because they're legends. Like coaching matters in college because it's not just coaching. You're recruiting. You are getting a new whiff and new brand of players every single year, usually, or every 2 years, or every 4 years. But in the NBA, coaches change jobs often because, you know, stars make the call, and that's a lot to do with a lot of things. I mean, LeBron's a big part of that. Durant was a big part of that when he got to Brooklyn. So I don't make too much of it. I think look, now, what I will say, like, I think Ime Udoka, as I said, has experience on staffs that have been in the playoffs and have been on deep playoff runs. He coached Kawhi Leonard up in San Antonio, was like his guy when they were on those teams that played Miami in the finals. And so like I think Ime Udoka has been in enough big games as an assistant that I really don't think it's going to be a factor. But to answer your question, I'm fascinated to see, especially when the Celtics get pushed around in a series in the first round and it's 1-1. Does Ime Udoka have the understanding, okay, hey, like this worked in game 1 or this didn't work in game 1. This is how we need to game plan for game 2. But if we see a lot of the same stuff, and that was the criticism of Brad Stevens, which I thought was unfair. I thought that was the immaturity of the team. So to answer to your point, like we don't know yet about Ime Udoka, but we'll find out like if they know how to adjust from one game to the other.
My other question was gonna be one comment and then a question. So way earlier in the conversation, we talked about the Celtics winning close games. And I thought, I mean, I didn't think they played well against Indiana, but I was glad that they won that game. Because obviously Indiana is not one of the top teams in the East, but I just wanted them to win a close game and see what that feels like. And I thought I could see it in the guys' faces too. Like it was a close game. It could have gone. They could have lost it, but they just pulled it off. And I thought that was a good step toward like winning close games, you know? Or did you feel the same way?
A little bit. I mean, the opponent's not that great. I mean, I'll say this about the Pacers. Like, Rick Carlisle's their coach. They're actively, I don't know if they're tanking. I think they kind of are, but they're not because like they have too many young players. Like the whole tanking thing, and you hear it in the NFL a lot too. Like, players don't tank. Front offices and maybe coaches that have stability will. Like if a coach is told like, hey, you're definitely back next year, but you got to sign off on we're going to move so-and-so. It's kind of like they're not saying. I mean, they're not. Maybe they are saying it. I don't think they are telling coaches to lose games, but the personnel moves kind of tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
I think that dude that they have, Tyrese Halliburton, on the Pacers. He's a player. He's good. He gave them fits. So, to be fair, from a scouting perspective, that was not the same Indiana team the Celtics had seen previously. It's the NBA, man. Like, it happens. You're gonna run in. I think the Celtics have also. It's when you're good, you're gonna get the other team's best effort. Just like Golden State loses games. I mean, did you get over the weekend? Oklahoma City faced a fully healthy Suns team. Now, the Suns have locked up the 1 seed in the West. They've locked up their franchise record in wins. Suns were up 12 early in the second quarter, and they lost by, I think they lost by 15. Like,
yeah.
But you mean, I mean, and they were like, it happens. But to your point, Vladimir, that the Celtics didn't just follow. I mean, look, I keep looking at it like I compare it to last year. Like last year, they might go. I'm just trying to imagine it in my head. If they're at the end of the game and it's not going easy against the team you figured would have been an easy win, you just mark it on the schedule, automatic win. I think last year they get frustrated, or even earlier this year, they get frustrated like, well, this guy doesn't pass the ball, so like whatever, like F this. Instead, it's been like, okay, nope, let's run our stuff, let's do what's been working, we'll be fine. And that's what they did. They did the latter. They ran their stuff, stayed true to their principles, and didn't get overwhelmed that a team that they probably should have creamed by 15 gave them a game. And then they do that, and then they show you what they do when they took advantage of a team like the Wizards without their best player, Bradley Beal, and they took it to them. And also credit to the Celtics defense, but also the Wizards just didn't make shots. Celtics didn't let them in the game. They said, no, this is over from the opening tip, right? So Pacers made shots too. So
yeah.
That's why, like, there's a little bit of that's what I mean when I say it's the NBA, because you might play a team that's young and up and coming, and guys are playing for contracts, guys are playing for their next jobs, guys are playing for maybe a trade to another team in the offseason. Someone might look at Halliburton and go, wow, we really like that kid. Like, we'll give up even more than what the Kings did or the Pacers did to get him from the Kings. And guys just shoot the lights out. So it happens.
I know we've been talking for a while, John. Did you have any last questions or something? Or
I mean, Brandon actually mentioned it at the start of the podcast. You know, it's definitely off topic. You know, it's not Celtics related, but that was dope.
Yeah, it was dope. It was definitely dope. Yeah.
Brandon Glasheen, man, you guys can catch him on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, the Sports Hub. You know, he's everywhere. He's on ESPN, DraftKings, like that dude. He's doing big things out there, and you know, he'll probably blow up pretty soon too. So if you're still watching, make sure you're subscribing, make sure you're sharing the videos, commenting. Shout outs to everybody that showed up to our 2-year anniversary event. That thing was, you know, we had a good time. You know, people won Celtics tickets, they won merch, they won, you know, alcohol, they won all kinds of stuff, man. So, you know, really appreciate you guys, and make sure you guys following us on all social media platforms at ProFanSports on everything except for Instagram, and that's at ProFans_sports. So until next time, man, Barry, we missed you. You know, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Yeah, Barry, I hope you're okay, man. That's weird. He's never missed an episode before. This is kind of weird. Yeah, I hope you're okay. Yeah, see everybody next week. What'd you say?
Supporters are going to be upset.
Yeah. All right, see everybody next week.